My neighbor's dog kept digging under my fence. I paid for repairs again and again. When I finally put up a barrier, she called animal control on me. He deserves freedom. Your wall is cruel, she said. They fined me. That night, I reviewed my security footage and sent it to someone with more power than the HOA. I live in St. Charles, Illinois. Not a big place, but quiet, safe. My house backs up to another two-story home, same cookie-cutter shape as mine, same builder. Only real difference was the people living inside. When we moved in, the house next door had a single woman named Beth and a big dog, Bruno. He's a mix of something like shepherd and husky. Loud bark. Always sniffing at the fence. At first, things were fine. We'd nod at each other, say hi when we took out trash. I didn't think anything of it until the morning I found the first hole. I had just walked into the backyard, coffee in one hand, ready to water the tomato planters. I almost twisted my ankle. There was a big dip right near the fence, with loose dirt piled around it. When I bent down, I saw the tunnel went right under the vinyl fence, wide enough for a dog his size. I knew immediately who it was. I took a few pictures with my phone, then walked over and rang Beth's doorbell. She answered in pajama pants and a hoodie. "Oh, is something wrong?" I said, "I think Bruno's been digging under the fence again." She sighed, rubbed her eyes like I'd woken her up. "I'm really sorry. I'll come look." We stood there in the yard, both staring at the hole. She apologized a second time and promised to keep him inside until she could patch it up. I wasn't mad. Just annoyed. I told her I'd fill it in for now. She thanked me, said she'd make it up to me. I patched it with a shovel and topsoil. Done deal, or so I thought. But it wasn't just once. About a week later, I came home from a grocery run, stepped into the backyard, and saw paw prints in the mud. Bruno had been inside again. He'd dug another hole, slightly to the right of the last one. Even deeper. This time I saw scratch marks on my side of the fence where he'd climbed through. I texted Beth. She replied an hour later, "OMG. Again? I'm sorry, I thought I had him on the leash all day." I didn't respond. I spent that weekend reinforcing the area with rebar stakes and extra panels. I wasn't handy, but I was tired of patching holes. That held for maybe 3 weeks. Then one night, just past midnight, I heard barking from my backyard. I opened the sliding door and turned on the floodlight. Bruno was standing in the middle of my grass, chewing on one of my kids' soccer balls. I called her the next day. She answered on the third ring. I told her he'd been in our yard again. There was a long pause. Then she said, "Maybe your fence just isn't strong enough. He's not doing anything dangerous." I was floored. He's in my yard. It's not about danger. It's about boundaries. She gave a half laugh. He just wants to run around. Maybe your yard's more interesting than mine. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a problem, it was going to be a war of patience. So I got serious. I hired a local fence company. Paid $780 to install reinforced posts and bury metal stakes every 2 feet. I kept the receipt, just in case. Beth saw the workers in the yard. She didn't say a word. I thought it would end there. 2 weeks later, another hole appeared. This one looked different. It had been carefully filled with leaves and covered up with dirt. Like someone tried to hide it. That's when I installed the camera. I pulled out an old motion sensor lawn cam, mounted it to a pole in the yard, and aimed it directly at the weak spot in the fence. It had night vision, 1080p. Nothing fancy, but enough. I didn't tell Beth. Then came the animal control visit. A week after setting up the cam, a city vehicle pulled into my driveway. I was working from home and stepped out. 2 animal control officers stood on my porch. They were polite but serious. They said they'd received a complaint about hazardous fencing that could trap or injure animals. I asked who complained. They said it was anonymous but showed me a printed photo. Someone had taken a picture of my buried concrete barrier and said it posed a risk to animals digging under. I explained the situation, the digging, the fence damage. They weren't unsympathetic, but they still issued a fine for $150, said the barrier had to come out. It's considered a hazard to wildlife, one officer said. I couldn't believe it. I was being fined for protecting my own property. That night, I watched the footage. I sat down with a beer and pulled up the camera archive from the night before. It records motion-triggered clips, and sure enough, at 2:13 a.m., there was movement. Beth. She came out in pajamas with a flashlight. She crouched near the fence and started pulling at something on the ground. She moved part of the barrier out of the way, one of the corner pieces I'd carefully buried. She whispered something, then stepped back. Bruno appeared, tail wagging. She pointed at the tunnel and he slipped through into my yard. Then she leaned forward and threw a toy over the fence. I just sat there staring at the screen. She wasn't just letting him dig. She was helping him. I sent it to someone with more power than the HOA. My boss, Tim, is also the president of our HOA. We'd never talked much about it at work, he kept things separate. But I figured if anyone could help, it'd be him. I forwarded the footage, along with copies of the fine, repair receipts, and a note, I've been patient. But this is harassment. She's tampering with my property and endangering my family. Please advise. He responded within an hour, got it. Reviewing with legal. Do not remove the barrier. 3 days later, Beth got a notice from the city. Not from animal control this time, from code enforcement. They hit her with a violation for property tampering, unauthorized digging, and contributing to repeated trespassing. They also said she'd be liable for any additional damage. She lost it. She screamed at my house one afternoon, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You think you're clever? You're a control freak. A psycho. I didn't say anything. I just closed the blinds. She started parking on the street instead of in her driveway. She stopped walking Bruno. I saw her loading bags into her car late at night. She hasn't spoken to me since. Things were quiet. Too quiet. After the violation notice, Beth kept to herself. No yelling, no more complaints. But the silence didn't feel like peace, it felt like planning. I checked the camera footage every few days, but nothing happened for a while. Then one day, I got a letter. Not email, not certified mail, just a plain white envelope slipped under my front door. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. It read, concrete can crack. Fences rot. But grudges stay fresh. That was it. No name. No signature. I sat down, reread it a few times. It wasn't threatening, not directly. But it was enough to make my hands shake a little. I showed it to my wife. She said, we need to report this. So I did. I forwarded it to the HOA board and the city enforcement officer handling the case. They said they'd make a note of it. But nothing else came of it. Then the real damage started one morning. I stepped outside and found the side gate to my backyard wide open. I always lock it. Always. The latch was broken clean off, hanging by one screw. At first, I thought it was kids or maybe someone trying to cut through. But when I looked closer, I noticed small things missing. The hose had been uncoiled and laid across the grass like someone tripped on it and left it. A planter was knocked over near the back fence. One of the tomato cages was crushed. It was subtle, but it was meant to unsettle me. I checked the camera. Nothing. I had turned the yard cam to face the fence line, but the side gate was out of view. My stomach dropped. I realized Beth had probably scoped out the camera angle weeks ago. She knew what I could and couldn't see. So I got smart. I installed a second camera on the opposite side of the yard, hidden behind the gutter. Covered the entire fence line, plus the gate. I upgraded the motion sensor and hooked it up to my phone. That weekend, I caught something on it. Not Beth. Not Bruno. A man. Late 30s, camo hoodie, dark jeans. He walked along the outside of my fence just after 2 a.m., flashlight turned off, carrying a small bag. He never entered. He just stood by the gate, bent down like he was fiddling with something, then left. I didn't recognize him. I sent the footage to the police this time. They took it seriously. A patrol car came by the next night. I didn't sleep. Then I found the hidden hole. It was about a week later. I was trimming along the base of the back fence when I hit something soft. Not just dirt, loose soil, packed deliberately. I dug a little with my hands. There it was, another tunnel. This one deeper, cleaner. Not dug by a dog. Whoever made it was trying to tunnel under the barrier. It wasn't just Beth anymore. Someone else was involved. Things got real ugly the next day. Bruno wasn't barking anymore. I hadn't heard him in 2 days. I thought maybe she gave him away. But then I saw a new sign on her lawn, for sale by owner. I was stunned. She didn't tell anyone. Just suddenly decided to leave. Then that night, my daughter came into our room holding a piece of notebook paper she found slipped under her bedroom window. Your dad doesn't play fair. That's not how neighbors live. My wife was done. We called the police again. This time they opened a case file. They sent someone to talk to Beth. When the officer came back, he looked tired. He said, she denies everything. But she's leaving. Moving out by end of the month. She's not well. I thought it was over. Beth's for sale by owner sign stayed up for 3 weeks. Then it was gone. No one moved in. No trucks, no real estate agent. Her car was still in the driveway, but I didn't see her around. I asked a neighbor across the street if they'd seen her. She said, oh, she still lives there. But I think she's staying with her sister. Comes by late at night, maybe twice a week. I nodded, but inside, I felt that same tight grip in my chest. I didn't like this half-in, half-out thing. It felt like someone was hiding behind a door, just waiting for me to stop paying attention. The package. About 10 days later, I got a package. It wasn't addressed to me exactly. Just had my street number, no name. It was light, small, wrapped in plain brown paper. I opened it on the porch. Inside was a small Ziploc bag filled with dirt. Not potting soil, yard dirt. Mixed in were pieces of white vinyl, broken like from a fence post. And tucked into the bottom was a folded photo, a printout of my backyard from above. A drone shot. I nearly dropped it. No note this time. No signature. Just the dirt, the broken vinyl, and the overhead photo of my yard. I ran back inside, locked all the doors, and checked both cameras. Nothing. No motion, no alerts. Nothing the night before either. I called Tim, my boss. HOA president. I told him what happened. I asked him if he'd ever seen a case like this before, if someone ever used the HOA as cover for something else. He paused. Then he said, actually, you should come in. What he told me changed everything. We met at his office in town, neutral ground. He closed the door, pulled out a thick folder, and said, we weren't going to tell you, but I think you deserve to know. Inside were printed reports. Complaints. Old records. Beth had been written up by 2 previous HOAs. In Elgin and Batavia, same pattern. Aggressive complaints against neighbors, manipulation of HOA rules, animal complaints, and eventual forced sales. But here's what you need to see, he said, sliding one paper toward me. It was a police report. From 5 years ago. It was a domestic disturbance call. Different address, but same name. The officer had written, caller stated neighbor was placing items on her lawn as threats. Left notes suggesting retaliation. No charges filed due to lack of physical evidence. Caller was advised to seek mediation. Tim looked at me. She's done this before. And it usually stops when she's forced out. But she wasn't gone, not really. I came home the next Friday night to a shattered flower pot on the front porch. One of the ceramic ones we'd had for years. Smashed in place. No signs of forced entry. No wind that day. Inside the dirt, tucked under the broken ceramic, was another photo. This time a close-up of Bruno's face, printed black and white, red pen scribbled across it, "He still misses you." My wife cried. My daughter asked if we were in danger. I didn't have an answer. I just said, "We're changing the locks tonight." The locks didn't help much. I changed the deadbolts on the front and back doors, installed keypad entry, added a second motion light near the side gate. I even got one of those doorbell cams, even though I hated the idea of needing one. But it didn't stop what came next. This time, it wasn't something physical. It was silence. No knocks. No notes. No messes in the yard. Nothing for over a week. That might sound like a relief, but it wasn't. It felt like a held breath. Like something was waiting to land. I stopped checking the camera footage every night. That was a mistake. My daughter found the next one. She was playing in the backyard when she called out, "Dad? What's this?" She was standing near the tree line at the very back of our lot, holding something in her hand. I walked over, heart already speeding up. It was a dog collar. Bruno's collar. It had the tag on it. Same phone number. Same silver ring. I took it from her slowly. "Where'd you find this?" She pointed to the base of the tree. There, tucked under a rock, was a folded plastic bag. Inside it, more dirt. Another tiny broken piece of vinyl fence. And a sticky note, "You win. But you'll never sleep the same." I called the police again. This time I showed them everything. The collar. The notes. The photos. The baggies. They opened a full investigation, but told me the same thing they'd said before: unless they caught someone in the act, or unless I had proof of a direct threat, there was only so much they could do. They offered to patrol the street more often. But I knew what that meant. I was on my own. Then the final hit came. I went into work one morning to find an envelope on my desk. No postage, no company letterhead. Just my name written in blue pen. Inside, a photo of my daughter. It wasn't anything bad, just her sitting on the backyard swing. But it wasn't one I'd taken. It was recent, taken from the back fence line, slightly elevated. The angle suggested it was shot from inside Beth's house. Or the woods behind it. I walked into Tim's office, shut the door, and said, "She's still here." He nodded slowly. "I know. The house sale fell through. She's squatting. Family won't take her in." I stared at him. "Then why isn't anyone doing anything?" He said nothing. That was when I realized something. This wasn't just about a fence. Or a dog. Or the HOA. This was about watching a person unravel, and realizing that no one, not the HOA, not the city, not even the police, knew what to do once they finally snapped. She was still living there. I drove by late one night, past midnight, after tossing in bed for hours. Her porch light was off, but the upstairs window, the one that faced my daughter's bedroom, was faintly glowing blue. TV, maybe. Or a phone screen. The grass was overgrown. Mail stuffed in her box. But there was a folding chair sitting right at the property line, facing my fence. Empty. Just sitting there. Like it was waiting. I didn't stop. Just drove slow, watched that window until I turned the corner. My wife wanted to move. She brought it up one morning after breakfast. "This house doesn't feel like home anymore," she said quietly, holding her coffee with both hands. "Not since all this started." I nodded. I didn't have the energy to argue. But I also didn't want to run. That's what it would feel like. Like she wins. Like we built this life, put everything into it. And someone could dig holes under the fence until we gave up and left. Still, I started looking at listings. Just in case. Then one night I got an email, no subject line. Just a video attachment. No sender name, no body text. It was footage, clearly filmed from a phone, of Bruno, digging. But this wasn't my yard. It was some old clip, maybe from a year ago. He's younger, faster. You can hear Beth laughing in the background. Then her voice says, softly, almost like she's singing, "Go under, Bruno. Go find the weak spot. The video cuts off right after that. I sat there staring at the screen, replaying the tone in her voice. It wasn't playful. It was practiced. I still have that collar in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out and just hold it, turning it over in my hands, waiting to feel something that makes sense. But all I feel is this dull, permanent edge, like the moment you realize it was never really about the dog. And maybe it was never about the fence either. It was about someone choosing you, quietly, as the thing they'd ruin just to feel something.